Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Vunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavakai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we're in a little bit of a collective pause. It's a pause. Timing is very important. Timing, tempo, and pace in the natural world and in life, and especially in healing. We see that as a scientific principle in embryology, in the growth and development of the human organism from conception to fetus. Everything has to be precisely timed. If it gets desynchronized from its timing, it can't grow properly. Because the embryo, first it has to be in neutral. Okay, if it's not in neutral, it can't respond to the breath of life, and it can't grow properly. Then it has to be in perfect timing and perfect synchronization, every part, because it's growing as a whole. It's not like this part moves and then this part moves, it's all as a whole. So each part has to be synchronized with the timing that's being brought. And certain parts grow really fast at one stage, and another part grows really fast at another stage. So after the baby's born, the midface has to grow 10 times faster than the upper face. Did I get that right? Yeah. So they have big foreheads, small cheeks. So this area has to grow 10 times faster than this part. So there's this timing. Now if that timing gets thrown off in utero, in the growth and development of the embryo, it'll throw the whole thing off because the whole thing's trying to change at once. So if the face is out of sync with the chest, you could end up with the face in the wrong place. Right? So it has to have this timing. And built into timing is something we call a pause, which is what we're in right now. Right? That's why people are trickling in a little bit late, because they're actually feeling the movement of the breath of life and responding to it in kind. So people are feeling a little bit tired, they're integrating a lot of treatments, or they're just feeling like it's just kind of hard to get over there right now. You know, so it's just kind of hard to get there. This isn't a laziness. This isn't tamas. It's not tamasic. It's actually sattvic, because they're actually in harmony with the movement of the breath of life that's in a pause right now. So collectively, as a group that's healing together and moving to wholeness, we're actually in a pause. We're actually in a pause. And the pause is a reset with the tempo of life, and it's an opportunity also for integration. So the new can be assimilated and become part of the whole. There's new energies, new information, new understanding, new relationship with life, new relationship with one another. And there's a pause to digest that. So even after we eat lunch, generally there's a pause. In your physiology, there's a little bit of a pause so you can digest, and you naturally feel a little bit tired or just want to take a little rest. Sometimes it's maybe only 20 minutes. That's a pause. Okay? The pauses in life, the pauses actually bring the meaning to the life. The pauses in music, if there's no pause, there's no music. So you have notes, 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 notes. It's the pauses between the notes that allow the music to express itself. If there was no pause, it would just be a continuous note, it would be a continual hum. There would be no music. Right? So the pause gives an opportunity to integrate what's happened and to learn and to digest and to prepare for the next movement, the next event, or the next movement. Because osteopathy and Ayurveda, the science comes out of observing the natural world, out of observing what nature's bringing, because nature's work is perfect. You can't improve upon it. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we just have to understand what it's doing and communicating, and then imitate it to the best of our ability. So there's pauses built in all over the place. Every morning, sometimes 3 times a day, but at least twice a day in the natural world there's a pause. If you ever hike, say in the desert, where the circadians are really loud, maybe you've heard that, and they're humming really, really loud. All of a sudden, at a particular time of day, it's often before high noon, it's like right between high noon and sunrise, everything comes to a stop, all together, all at once. And there's this pause. And then slowly they kind of restart. They restart their humming and chirping. And then there's pauses in our life, but we miss them. So you go to the grocery store and you get stuck in line. That's actually a pause, right? That's an opportunity to just stop and to breathe and to allow the breath of life to kind of reset you, give you a new tempo. So often out of the pause will come a new tempo, a new pace, and a new expression of life. So we're in a pause right now. And so you can feel it kinesthetically what it feels like for yourself, so you can recognize when it's showing up in your life. If you feel the atmosphere that we're in, collectively, it feels much different than yesterday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Right? Yesterday there was a potency that was coming. There was not a pause. The breath of life was bringing something in. We were on fire, we were charged, we were having a good time. And during our talk, the breath of life came through and treated everybody. A lot of people got treatments, and a lot of people told me how they felt. They got treated and felt it afterwards, just like if they had been on a treatment table getting a treatment. But that's not present today. It's different, it's a different expression. It's not wrong or right, but if we acknowledge it, then we're in sync with it, and it has more potency. It can do its work more deeply, and we're in more harmony with nature. So at some point, either this afternoon or tonight or tomorrow morning, the pause will end and there'll be a new theme. There'll be a new expression of life. So as practitioners or as participants in life, this is helpful to know and recognize, because then we know what's being expressed and how to be in sync with it. We're not going to try to introduce a whole bunch of new material when we're in a pause. We're not going to try to introduce a new therapeutic modality when we're in a pause, if we're healing. We're not going to try to create a new masterpiece if we're an artist and it's in a pause. We're going to enjoy the pause. Now, pauses are really hard for Pitta people. Pitta people don't like pauses. Pittas are anti-pause. And they'll push their way through. Pitta stands for pushy. Okay? Vata stands for variation. Yeah. Why was there crackers next to the avocado today? There was a very precise reason. It wasn't an accident.
If you were, I think, Kappa, you were supposed to take the cracker.
Yeah, yeah. And why would that be? Yeah. So what's the nature of an avocado? Oily. And what's the nature of kapha? Heavy, oily, right? So would an avocado increase kapha or decrease kapha? It would increase. And what's the nature of a cracker? Dry. So would a cracker decrease kapha or increase kapha? Decrease. Good. See, this is what you do in a pause. You integrate. Or you talk about the weather. You know, if you live in the country like we do, a lot of you live in the city, but we kind of get used to pauses because most of our life is in a pause. There's not that much going on, you know. So a lot of weather gets talked about. Fishing and weather gets talked about. And the tempo of a conversation when it's a pause is a little different. It's really enjoyable when you get into it, but Pitta people hate it. Pitta's anti-pause. We're talking about pauses. And we're in a pause. So the kapha people are settling in and getting all happy, and the Pitta people are bouncing off the walls because they want the pause to be over. So it's a time to talk about the weather or sports, but you know, in a small town, pauses come along and they're noticed more often because there's a different tempo to life. So when the pause comes, you just kind of stand around and shuffle your feet a little bit, and yeah, I hear it might rain some. Yeah. And there's a pause. Not like the rain last year, is it? Remember that rain of '69? But see, the thing is, when you embrace the pause, it embraces you. And you begin to integrate the parts that are trying to integrate. And it becomes more of a wholeness, so that then the wholeness of life starts to express itself in a different way. So pauses really are a lot of fun, and they really challenge us, and they're essential to life. Our speech, our speaking would have no meaning without the pause. And actually, the meaning of what's being spoken is in the pause. So you listen to the pauses between the words to get the real meaning of what's being expressed. You listen to the meaning between the words, the pauses between the words to get the meaning. That's where the meaning is. And pauses are nice because you don't have to do anything. In fact, if you're really in sync with the pause, it's not really much can be done. If you're meant to be in a pause, you will be no matter what, because sometimes when my pitch is up and I'm at the grocery store, I try to pick the line that has going to be the shortest and fastest. But if the tide means, if the breath of life means for you to be in the pause, it doesn't matter what line you pick. Something's going to happen. You're going to get stuck there. Happened to me the other day. I'm looking at 3 lines, big line, bunch of groceries, older lady, few groceries, but I know it's going to take her forever to work the debit card. And then that line, 1 bottle of something. Okay, go in there. Everything you could imagine happened wrong at that register for that 1 bottle of Tabasco sauce. In every other line, they were long gone before I even got, right? These are pauses, but we fight them. Then you have pauses at red lights, right? So these are opportunities to watch the breath. Now, the breath has a pause too. And that's one of the most important parts of the breath. Right? So there's an inhalation. And we talked about the inhalation on day 1, the shape and the form and the nature of it. And then there's a pause. And then there's an exhalation. And there's another pause. The pause is connected to eternity. And we said that thoracic respiration is connected to the breath of life. So if we appreciate the pause between inhalation and exhalation, there's a moment there of pure awareness. There's a moment there where eternity is peeking into the temporal. So when you breathe in, appreciate the pause. You don't have to do any effort to make it longer. Appreciating it will naturally extend it in its own perfect tempo. And then there'll be an exhalation, and it will synchronize, because pauses are about synchronization. Pauses are about synchronizing us with life, synchronizing us with the breath of life, synchronizing us as a community. So in the pause, we come together as a deeper expression of wholeness. They're essential to life. No pause, no life. people think if they're listening to the pause in the conversation, the space between the words, that they're going to miss the conversation. You're actually going to understand more. You're going to get a deeper understanding of what's being said. So, in a way, the pause is holding everything. It's holding the substance of life. So, what's the best dosha to have? Oh, who said that? That's right. You can graduate. Yeah, the one you have. The thing about pauses is, if you're really in sync with it, you can't go on to the next topic, the next subject, the next event until the breath of life resumes, lifts the pause. You really can't. I mean, you can, but you're gonna be really pushing it. You're gonna be really using your willpower, and it's gonna get you tired. My teacher of osteopathy, my medicine guru, Dr. Jealous, was so committed to following the breath of life in every aspect of his life. I was once in a class when a pause came into the class. The pause lasted 4 hours. And this was a 6-hour day class, and so this was 2 hours into the class, the pause came. He did not move on. We waited we waited for 4 hours, and then class was over. Yeah.
We didn't
Yep.
wait in silence.
No, we didn't sit.
We just didn't move on.
Right. Right. Chrissy was there. It wasn't like we were sitting in perfect silence and, it was just like we talked about the weather. Fishing. There was a lot of fishing talk. Camping. See, this is the function of sports, actually. So you have something to talk about in the pause. That's really sports has a really, really important function. Especially golf. Golf and baseball are like the king of pauses.
Right. But right now, it's March Madness.
It is March Madness.
Yeah.
Do you have your bracket?
No.
Speaking of king of pauses, who's the king of the doshas? Hatha? Hatha? Any other ideas? Pitta? Prana. Then that would have to be Vata. Any other ideas? I mean, don't the Pittas want to say, it's Pitta? I'm the king. I'm the king. It is Vata. And why would Vata be called the king of the doshas?
Because it moves the others.
Why not the queen? It's so patriarchal. Gosh. We're going to declare Vata is the queen of the doshas. As of today. It's official. The pause is officially over because we've declared a new truth.
And now pause.
And now we're still in a pause. Isn't it amazing how nature sets us straight? You can't lie. You can't look in the mirror and tell yourself you're a kapha if you're a pitta, right? I mean, you can try. So why is Vata the queen of the doshas? Let's think it through. Well, it can be hard to think it through in a pause, right?
You said something about Vata was a breath? So could it be because of breath, and that breath has to flow in that movement?
Yeah. Vata is air and ether. Mm-hmm. So if Vata increases, if in nature the wind blows, what happens to the fire?
It spreads.
Mm-hmm. It ignites it, right? If the wind in nature blows, what happens to the lake?
It ripples.
It becomes greater, right? At the ocean, there's big storms offshore, and there's these big winds, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, and it brings these huge waves onto the shore. And so now the expression of the water element is amplified, and you feel the power of it. Right, Christian? He and I surf, so we understand all of this much better than anybody who doesn't surf, because because surfing is the king of the sports. Surfing is the king of the pauses, actually, right? You're waiting. I mean, surfing is 99.9% pause and 0.1% activity. I mean, that activity is really intense when it's there, but surfers, they get together and they drive around, and they get out and they stand around and they look at the wave, and
For like an hour.
at least. And they shuffle, and they kind of, might be better when the tide starts coming in. Yeah. Wind could get on it, though. Maybe we ought to go check South Beach. All right. You get in the car and drive to South Beach. Get out. Kick the ground a little. Looks a little better than the other one. Yeah, but tide's getting ready to go out. It's going to kill it in 10 minutes. Anyways, point being, a lot of pauses. And then you paddle out, and then you get on your board, and then you wait for the sets. You just sit around waiting. Life is really about pauses. That's, I think, why Dr. Jellis liked fishing. That's a big, huge pause, isn't it?
And then you catch one.
Maybe. You could wait 6 hours and spend 10 minutes trying to reel it in, and it gets away. Yeah. So pauses are everywhere in life. They bring the context and the meaning. And if you catch the pause in your breath, just watch that pause and see what happens. So we're integrating that. So Vata is the queen of the doshas. Which season is the queen of the seasons? Is it summer?
I'm saying spring, I don't know. Spring?
Why spring?
I don't know, everything starts growing.
Yeah, it's like there's a perfect balance. Because summer is really, really hot. I mean, springtime kapha can get a little exacerbated because of the wet element and the thawing out. But really, things are really coming into a really perfect balance, right? The days aren't the longest and they're not the shortest. And the weather's not the hottest and it's not the coldest. And things are coming into bloom and getting ready to express new life. So it's sometimes in the Ayurvedic literature that spring is the, do they say queen or king? And it's got to be queen. The queen of the seasons. So we're in the queen of the seasons. And the pause is the queen of the tempo. And it gives the tempo. Without the pause, you couldn't really have a tempo or a pace because it's the pause that defines it. Right? In a sense, pause creates time, which is kind of ironic since it's connected to eternity. So from the point of view of the breath of life, the breath of life is always flowing and that it expresses other tempos and rates and phenomenon, but it's always moving. So it's like a continuous exhalation of the Creator. It doesn't breathe in, it's always breathing out. From our point of view, we're breathing it in, it's filling us up. So you could say, from that point of view, that love is self-emptying. It's not self-centered, it's not self-fulfilling, it's self-emptying. Because the breath of life is an expression of the divine, which is perfect love. And it never breathes in, it never has to take a breath back in. Now there is a current within the breath of life that has a repelling and a pulling. There is that there. But the essence of the breath of life is a continual flow, a continual movement, which sometimes when we're really neutral and really perceptive, we can feel this subtle something passing through the stillness. And we had it several times yesterday. Within that, then there's a phenomenon that gets a little bit denser and a little bit easier to feel, and that's a breathing that comes and goes, and that's the breathing of the natural world. So it exhales in and it inhales back out. There's this pranic breathing of everything in the natural world. It's been scientifically documented. It breathes at 50 seconds for an exhalation and 50 seconds for an inhalation, approximately. And then there's pauses. Sometimes it stops. So there is this force, and it's a good thing because that's what gives us the impetus to return to source. So we don't get too caught in the Maya and all the phenomenon. There's another force pulling us back home. So that's really wonderful. Really wonderful. So love is self-emptying. So why was there crackers next to the avocados? To create balance, right? So kapha, avocado's a little on the kapha side, and we're a little bit into a bit of a kapha season. So if you are kapha, you can take a little cracker with the avocado. You've got an alchemy that balances it out.
If you're supposed to be on a pacifying diet, you wouldn't want that cracker.
Then you might avoid the cracker. Yeah. Did you guys learn anything else in the last couple of days about how to live, how to be with your body and your temple and your doshas? I think they're just enjoying the pause.
Pitta is coming out.
Well, at least Jeremy learned something.
Yeah, I had my hand raised. So what was it that you mentioned earlier, where it's basically just an action that goes against what you know is right? And say it louder.
Prajna or pragna parada. It's like crime against wisdom, or not listening to the body.
Yeah. So those happen all the time. So that to me is the biggest thing. I don't know. We know what's best for us, right? It should be easy. So quit making it so hard on ourselves.
That's true. Health is easy. Healing is easy.
Masters say everything else is, God is simple, everything else is complex.
Guruji has said spirituality is easy.
And then the whole listening aspect like that makes a whole lot of sense. You know?
Maintain balance, get regular rest, eat whole foods, watch your breath, a little spiritual practice, and you'll have radiant health. A little exercise. It's not rocket science. It's natural, it's easy. But there is this tendency that when there's an imbalance, the energy of the imbalance has sort of a vortice effect, and it tends to pull you in that direction to feed it more, because it's not self-emptying.
Would that be called a craving?
It would be called craving. And we tend to crave what further brings the imbalance. We tend to. Yeah. So there's a whole science around recognizing what's a natural craving and what's an unbalanced craving. Yeah. Tanamai and Don can tell you. Do you want to tell?
Well, a short version of it would be, what? Oh, I'll talk about it. Okay. So a short version of it would be that there's something called samprapti in Ayurveda, which is the disease process. And so in first stages of disease, the body will have typically an intelligent craving. So if you have a little bit of, I don't know, a simple example.
Low magnesium.
Gas or something right after a meal. Or here's a simple one. You ate too heavy and then you're not hungry for your next meal. And you crave maybe a little bit of like something warming to balance it. There's an intelligence to certain cravings like if you have high heat, having something craving a little cooling, like coconut water or something like that, could be an intelligent craving. But if you've had a long process of having crimes against wisdom, the disease process is going further along, then the cravings can become less intelligent and further perpetuate the disease process. So if you already have a lot of heaviness and lethargy and it's raining outside and you're craving ice cream, there's something that's not, doesn't seem fitting to the time and the place and the state of being. So yeah, that's kind of short. But typically, earlier stage of disease process, the cravings are more true. Later on in the disease process, they could be not true.
And are these cravings then, are they akin to vasanas?
Are they what?
Are they vasanas?
I don't know. What's a vasana?
It's a samskara that's become self-sustaining. It's a patternized, habituated samskara.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
They could be connected to samskara, for sure. If you created a certain habit and pattern and haven't been listening to the initial balance, you can create that.
Some people get false appetite because the food is bringing something more than the nutrition, but there's a emotional craving for a particular thing. So you can check that by just going, if you're wondering if your appetite's real or false, you take a little walk, like a 20-minute walk. Just get the blood moving a little bit, and if the appetite goes away, then it may have been a false appetite. If it remains or gets stronger, then it's more likely a true appetite. As an example. Mm-hmm. Well, what else did you guys learn about your doshas or your ways to support your health and your life while you were here? Teach me something. Nothing?
I love that after the session that you told me to go be meditated. Because as a little doer, I always need to go do everything. And the ability to rest in beingness is there to a certain degree, but it does take bringing awareness that ability is there and then stabilizing it through habituating, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's important to step off of the sadhana gas, I think. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, and Lahiri Maharshi writes that there should be no expectation in the sadhana. It's an act of love. And Pitta people come with a lot of expectation to the sadhana. So it's not just the willpower of the sadhana, but it's then the expectation of it, which usually will reduce the fruits. So if we don't have expectation and we're neutral, then the question of how is your meditation is really irrelevant, right? People always ask, how is your meditation? I go, how do I know? It's an act of devotion, an act of love. He also said, if you feel like you're missing the devotion or the practice is becoming mechanical, to do more bows and more Mahamudra. More bows and more Mahamudra.
Say that again, because
No, I can never repeat, Ma.
I can't, but
Okay, we'll make an exception since there was a outside distraction. Which part do I need to repeat?
whatever you said while we walked by.
Yeah, it was the Mahamudra.
Did you hear the part about sadhana as an act of devotion? No expectation?
Yeah, yeah. That's what it was after that.
Did you hear the part about how we prepare the pizza before the sadhana?
It's okay, I'll get it next time.
No, I'll tell you, you know, I just tease you a little bit because I love you so much, right? I said, what did I say? Oh, yeah, if you feel like the practice, the sadhana is missing a little bit of the devotion or becoming a little too mechanical, Lahiri Maharshi wrote to do more bows and more Mahamudra in Kriya practice.
Is that the answer to everything? Do more bows or more?
Well, it could, for some situations, it could be more pranayama or more relaxation technique.
What situation is it more pranayama?
When the guru tells you,
What was the question?
what would be the situation to do more pranayama? And remember, there's an outer and inner guru, right? And Guruji has said, Guru's not a person, it's a principle. And sometimes we're fortunate that there's a person that can hold the principle or embody the principle at such a level that we're there with them as a person. But the guru is not a person, it's a principle. And then the outer guru is pushing us into the truth, and the inner guru is pulling us. So you're sandwiched. You can't escape. You're sandwiched in love. You're sandwiched in the health. There's health in front and health behind. You're pushing and pulling. So when Guru says do more pranayama, then do more pranayama. You guys must have learned something about daily care. Wasn't there anything about daily care? Day-to-day routines? Yeah, did you learn any? What did you learn there?
I learned I have a good routine.
You have a good routine. What do you like best about your routine?
My body likes 4 a.m. quite a bit.
4 a.m.?
The morning time.
Yeah.
There's enough silence there for me to slowly do everything in the Dinacharya sheet.
Oh, wow.
And unknowingly, I was doing all of those things in that very order. Minus sometimes I didn't have time for meditation, but I liked it because before everybody woke up, I had that time to myself.
Oh, yeah. That's good. Self-care. Yeah. So, do you guys like pauses? Are pauses okay now? Yeah?
It's helpful to understand it now, because there's a lot of times in a lot of situations in my life where I've never understood it
Yeah.
and forced it.
It happens a lot in conversations. People rush the pause because the culture is not so comfortable with the silence of the pause. There's the term the pregnant pause. It's really true because it's pregnant with the potential of the new that's about to be born. But really, mostly it's about integration. So, practitioners of the healing arts, they need to be aware of the pause as an essential principle, because they need to recognize during a treatment when there's a pause, or during the whole therapeutic process, someone's healing journey, when are they in a pause, and not to be prescribing new things in a pause, because it won't have the same utility or effect as just the natural pause. So we can watch it in our own lives, and then the practitioners, they need to be aware of these rhythms.
How are you aware of these rhythms in someone else's life?
Well, you're watching. You're watching, and it'll get expressed when they how they're communicating. Something will be said, or the pace, or the tempo. If it's happening at an unconscious level, they'll miss their appointment. Mm-hmm. There's many reasons people can miss an appointment, but it's sometimes it's a pause that's being missed by the practitioner or the patient.
How do you recognize when the pause is done?
Well, let's watch and see. Because we have a pause getting ready to come to an end here. No, really, can you feel it building a little bit? There's something. Huh?
The birds started singing.
The bird started singing. My prana started rising. The divine sound got a little louder. The bladder's getting a little full. I know it's time to empty the bladder soon. So all these things are changing where there's going to be a movement. Actually, there's going to be multiple movements, right? I'm going to move. The bladder's going to move. You're all going to move. The prana's going up. The breath of life in the room is starting to quiver a little bit. There's a quiver. Before it was sort of like a smooth lake. And it wasn't a deep stillness, because that's a different phenomenon that we'll talk about another time. But it was just kind of a chill. It was kind of like a glossy lake. But now the lake of the room, the ocean of life, it's get a little quiver, a little shimmer. If we were watching it in a lake or an ocean, you know, all the school of fish, they would all gather together and they would get real still. And then slowly the water would start to move a little bit, and then they would start to do this, and then they would start, and then all the activity would start. So it's the same thing happening in this community of little school of fish. We're a little school of fish in the ocean of love. And Divine Mother's the fisherwoman, casting her net for us to come. Some say the net is Maya, so you stay near the feet of Divine Mother. You don't get caught in the net. But there's a change. There's a change that happens. There's a change in the atmosphere. Even the weather's changing. The sun's coming out. The prana's rising. We're all interacting a little bit more. We could actually, you know, if it was earlier, we would start a new topic now. We'd go on to talk about something else or introduce something new. And we got to integrate a little bit through that, so we got to kind of remember a little bit what we learned, some of the things that have happened over the last 4 days, but more importantly, the prana was integrating. I'm not tired anymore. So I know the pause is over. I can feel a new event coming, and I'm excited for it. I'm like, okay, what's it going to be, you know? So if Krishna and I were standing around at the ocean, you know, deciding whether or not to surf, oh, now it's coming. Now all of a sudden, we'd been standing around for 3 hours. Then boom, it hits, and everybody runs to their car and changes and runs out, and now the activity is happening. Or if you were a farmer, you know, you'd be done. You and I'd be done talking about the weather, and we'd saunter back to our barn and get in the tractor and fire it up. Yeah, you feel it. It's a feeling. It's a good question. How do you know when the pause is over? In a sense, you're naturally moved. If you're really in it and really it really suffuses you, you have no desire to move or do anything until it passes. And once it passes, the desire, or not even the desire, but just the ease of activity returns. Like, I don't right now have any big desire to do anything other than shortly relieve the bladder, but I don't have a major desire to do something, but I feel the capacity to do something again. I feel the capacity to respond to life, where when we came in and there was this pause going on, there was no capacity. Capacity is a charge. Capacity, you know, in electronics, there's a capacitor that builds a charge, that diffuses a charge. So every environment has a capacity. And this is an environment, you're an environment, the room is an environment, so we have a capacity. When there's no capacity in the room, there's no capacity to do any work or to do anything. So I come in the room and I'm like, feels nice, but there's no capacity, right?
Yeah, you could tell that.
You could tell it.
Yeah.
So if we're not paying attention to that, we're going to use our willpower and overcome it. It would have been a horrible lecture. Everybody would have fallen asleep, nobody would have learned anything, and we all would have left tired. But instead we sat and honored what was being given in the moment. So that's a worship, that's a love, it's an act of devotion to the breath of life. And now the capacity is there. It hasn't brought, to me yet, it hasn't brought a meaning. It's just, it's there. And so there's this little bit of excitement, like, what's it going to be? You know?
So is death a pause?
What's that?
Death. Excuse me, death. The death is a pause.
No. It's a transition. I say that, I mean, I could be wrong. It could be a pause. But my perceptual experience of having helped hundreds of people die, it's not a pause. It's a transmutation, which is not a pause. The breath of life is actively doing something.
There could be pauses towards the transmutation. You see that process and then there's a passion.
When the breath leaves the body, it's very dynamic. It's very beautiful. Especially if the person's surrounded by loved ones. It's very dynamic. First they get completely transparent like a newborn, so they almost look like a newborn again. And then there's this capacity that fills the room. And then the elements start to leave the body one by one. So the heat leaves, first the sweat, so the water elements leaving, and then the heat. And then the breath accelerates a little bit because the prana is getting ready to leave. And then there's this quiver in the whole room, and then it leaves. And then there's something still passing through the body that's stronger than it was before. It's beautiful. It's inspiring. And then the whole fluid body, the whole pranic body involutes on itself, and it goes in like this, hits the midline, and then it breathes out into the ocean. It goes like this. It's exciting, huh? Yeah. So I'm not an expert on death or anything or after. I'm just saying what I've perceived. I work in a hospital and people die in hospitals, and it's, for me, it's part of the most important work that I do, because I consider the first breath and the last breath to be the most important. And so I always try to ensure that somebody has the best last breath that we can help them have. And some people have a large community around them, and some people have nobody. And so then myself and the hospital staff become their community for that transition. And I take it, I take it seriously. I've seen some really beautiful deaths. One of the most beautiful ones I saw was in Ray, Colorado, where I was doing residency. And this elder was having a death of a natural cause. I don't even remember what it was, but the whole family and nearly this person was very loved, so nearly the whole community, they come and they set up all these chairs like what you guys are sitting in. They set up all these chairs that look like a church. And they had candles burning, and there's must be 20 or 30 people sitting in rows at this person's bedside in complete reverence. There wasn't there was just almost silent, like they were sitting there praying in just complete reverence. It was incredible. And that person passed quite peacefully. Yeah. So see, we're out of the pause because we're on a new topic, and we're able to discuss it. Yeah. Yeah. So you guys must have learned something else. Did you learn about tongue scraping?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you done it? Oh, who's been taking Triphala? Yeah. Do you like it?
I like it, but yeah.
Is Triphala new for you?
Yes. I say I like it. I don't taste like it tastes.
Do you get a taste?
A little bit, yeah.
Were you here the day we talked about Triphala having all the tastes?
All the taste, right?
Yeah.
I got bitter.
Bitter, okay. Yeah. So we got to get you some bitter melon. Or some turmeric. Yeah. Turmeric tea. Turmeric's bitter, right? Yeah. Bitterish. What are your guys' favorite bitter foods or herbs?
Green, cilantro.
Cilantro?
Collard greens.
Collard greens.
Broccoli, all kinds of greens.
Yeah. Kale. And those greens have a natural chelating effect, right? I think there's a natural chelation process in the greens that will pull out heavy metals. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The gut microbiome is really a big deal. That's why we're sharing the beet kraut. That's a prebiotic. So you have a prebiotic, a probiotic, and a postbiotic. The postbiotic is what we're really interested in. So the probiotics everybody knows about, right? The acidophilus and the bifidus and these microorganisms. So it turns out, I guess there's like more microorganisms in your gut than there are neurons in your brain. And what these microorganisms put out affects our whole physiology and our whole brain chemistry. And actually can drive food cravings. Speaking of food cravings, the gut microbiome drives food cravings because the microbiome of the, what we would call the negative bacteria, the E. coli's and stuff, they put out chemicals that make us crave the foods that are generally junk food and waste material that they feed off of. And then the healthy bacteria, the bifidus and acidophilus, they put out chemicals that actually make us crave a more natural, balanced, healthy diet and food. So it turns out that the fermented foods, such as sauerkraut, beet kraut, is one of the best prebiotics. So you're taking a probiotic in whatever form you are, be it a capsuled probiotic or yogurt or buttermilk, and that's inoculating the gut with some probiotics. But now the probiotics, they need to be fed. You got to feed them the right food so that they can put out more of what we want them to put out, which is basically, you could almost say, a form of ojas. So we're getting the ojas of the microorganisms. So they're putting these chemical messages out as they digest what they're eating. It's affecting our whole biochemistry and our whole neurology and our whole thought process. So people that are recovering from PTSD, for example, PTSD actually changes the whole gut microbiome. Because the person's been under a stress response for a long period of time, the cortisol has changed